You know what I've discovered is one of the greatest feelings as an adult? It's sitting down to get into something, whether it's working on a new project, binging your favorite show, or eating dinner with the family, and realizing that you don't have to pee. It's an all new Prove It To Me. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prove It To Me. I'm your host, Dr. Matt Law, and if you're watching the video version of this, I bet you already noticed something different. Yeah, I moved the camera. Now, as I'm scrolling through my teleprompter here, it looks like I'm staring you straight in the face. Do you feel that? Do you feel that intimacy? Do you love it? Mm. Okay, I've got another great Study Finds episode for you today. I mean, I think it's great. This is one that, on the surface, confirms my prejudices. Aren't those the best? Don't you love running across articles that make you feel like you're thinking, saying, and doing the right things? I mean, screw the 2,000 other articles that show evidence that I'm wrong. I got this one that I will latch onto. Seriously, I don't even have to read it. I got this headline that is right in line with my way of thinking. I'm done. I'm fulfilled. Am I bad at sarcasm? I'm potentially bad at sarcasm, but I implore you to stick with me anyway. If this is your first time here, you know we don't do that. We don't take things at face value. We need substance, evidence, data. We take deep dives into the meat behind the headlines. I mean, headlines are catchy, but headlines are not evidence. They're supposed to be catchy. They're designed to get you to click on them. But that's the trick, isn't it? You have to actually click on it. Then you have to figure out if it's real, whether it's exaggerated, where the sources came from, etc. Now, if it's an article that says something you disagree with or might show how your way of thinking, saying, or doing things is wrong, you might actually go through all that work. But I'm willing to bet you won't do all that work for stuff that lines up with your way of thinking. Okay, I'm sorry. I went down that rabbit hole not once, but twice. The point is, we are here because we are the clickers. We are the skeptics. We leave opinions to the exorbitantly paid pundits that tell you what you want to hear, and we slum it over here looking for evidence and debate the appropriateness of the application of the scientific method. If I just accepted everything that I want to hear and fed you what you want to hear, well, obviously I'd make more money. Yeah, so thanks for listening to Prove It To Me. I guess this is my last episode. See ya. Nah, come on, folks. If you're a masochist, it's not that easy just to stop looking for ways to torture yourself. And it makes it even more fun to bring other people into your house of pain. So, welcome. I can't wait to torture you with data and research. So, you read the episode title, right? If you know me from outside of this podcast, you know that I'm an occupational safety and health professional with a background in environmental health. You might even be looking to this podcast for safety research. So, why the heck are we doing yet another episode on nutrition? I'm glad you asked. I mean, first of all, look at me. I love nutrition. Do you think all of this just happens? I know I look like I'm 16, but I'm actually 67. Okay, I'm 34. But my point is, I like being physically healthy. Mentally and emotionally, I'm a mess. That's why I have a podcast. But physically, it takes work. Believe it or not, I do not have the genetics to stay fit easily. Give me a month, and I can get really unhealthy really quickly and with very little effort. So I work my ass off to stay physically healthy. And it's not just exercise, it's also eating right. The problem is, there is a lot of information out there about nutrition that is not based in science, but it's super popular and a lot of people make big profits off steering other people in the wrong direction. Fad diets aren't sustainable for most people, and the lack of regulation on labeling in terms of those fad diets is just ridiculous. So, we have to do a little work and look at the real data behind nutrition to get this right. Now, here's another thing: nutrition is not unrelated to workplace safety. Health and wellness are big factors when it comes to taking care of our workforce. Have you heard of Total Worker Health, trademarked by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health? That's NIOSH for short, by the way. Yeah, physical, mental, and emotional health are extremely important, and a lot of research today aims to fill our gaps in knowledge about how these things affect our workforce just as much as the big physical hazards. One more thing, and I stand by this: if you yourself are a safety professional, how do you expect to care for the health and safety of other people if you don't take care of yourself? I know, and I'm sure you know, the folks that destroy themselves in the name of performing well at work. I guess you could call it noble in the short term, but it's not sustainable. My opinion is that you must be actively engaged in caring for yourself if you want to take care of others. I mean, lead by example too, right? And this goes for all of you in healthcare and service industries too. Okay, I am now going to remove myself from this soapbox and we can get into the research. Feel free to yell at me in the comments for taking you into my world of unwelcomed opinions. All right, let's get into today's study finds. Something you should know about me: I do everything early. I go to bed early, I wake up early, sometimes involuntarily, thanks insomnia, and I eat early. I'm someone that needs breakfast as soon as I wake up. If that's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, that means I get hungry between 10 and 11. So that's when I eat lunch. Then I'm hungry again around 4. And my oldest child is ravenous when she gets home from school too. So we generally eat dinner between 4 and 5 in the afternoon. I love this. I eat when I need to eat. I don't go to bed with the nasty feeling of a full stomach, and I generally make decent decisions about what to eat because I can usually plan that schedule fairly well. I'm the cook in the family, after all. Also, on the weekends, sometimes I like to make a big lunch instead of a big dinner. That lets me get my cooking out of the way early, and usually I'll either snack lightly or skip dinner entirely if I can manage it. I guess you could call it intermittent fasting, but it's impromptu and inconsistent for me. I get hangry, so fasting consistently is really not an option for me. Now, I realize that what I have is a luxury. I work from home. My time can be fairly flexible, and I can make this eating schedule work. Not everybody has that. So, wouldn't you know it? A study finds popped up on the news last week that affirms my lifestyle. Yeah, now I'm going to latch on to that and shove it in your face. Get ready for this one. The headline read something like, "The Dangers of Eating After 5 p.m." Wow. Well, guess what, everybody? I'm safe. I'm going to outlive all of you. Suck it, late eaters. Your dinner is coming after you. All right. I got you. Let's dig behind the headline and see if there's any hope for you folks that work in an office 9 to 5 or on a job site 7 to 7. I get that you don't have many choices, so let's see if we can figure out what's going on with this study. This is a big one, I guess. Google gave me several results right off the bat when I searched "eating after 5 study." I clicked on the most recent one from Daily Mail. Their headline reads, "Concerning study finds, quote, serious consequences for health, unquote, for people who eat after 5 p.m., and was published on November 21st, 2024. See, we're already off to a great start. Quote, concerning study. Time to freaking panic, folks. Daily Mail hopes you're concerned enough to click on it so you can see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 static advertisements and 2 video advertisements without even scrolling down to read the article. Ugh, my favorite is when there are so many that the page crashes before you can even get to the middle of the article. And that's exactly how far I needed to scroll to get to the link to the study. Now, actually, the first thing I want to do is make sure this is the study I'm looking for. I went back to my Google search and clicked on a similar recent article published by SciTech Daily. Both of these articles are pointing to a recent study done by Universitat Oberta de Catalunya. Yeah, that's UOC for short, and I'm going to use that since I struggle with pronunciation. And Columbia University, led by Dr. Diana Diaz Rizzolo. So, this is probably what I'm looking for. The study link takes me to Nutrition and Diabetes, which is a peer reviewed online open access journal bringing to the fore outstanding research in the areas of nutrition and chronic disease, including diabetes, from the molecular to the population level. That's from the front page of their website. The article title is, quote, Late Eating is Associated with Poor Glucose Tolerance, Independent of Body Weight, Fat Mass, Energy Intake, and Diet Composition in Prediabetes or Early Onset Type 2 Diabetes, end quote. That's a little less scary than concerning study, isn't it? Well, great news, everyone. This article is open access. So, what does that mean? Quite simply, anyone can access it. You don't need academic credentials or a paid membership to a journal to read the full article. The way this generally works, since journals need funds to maintain their review teams and databases, the authors pay the journals a fee to publish their articles for open access. These fees have a range that can commonly be anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 US dollars. Since academic researchers don't usually make a lot of money on their own, these fees are usually paid by grants. In fact, during the grant proposal process, it's common to add a budget line item for open access publishing. Now, I can't say for sure that any of that happened here because I was not able to find the fees on this journal's website. Also, this article is classified as a, quote, brief communication, which is evident when you open up the PDF version of the article. It's 4 pages. Remember the one on maple syrup we just did? That was 13 pages. In this article, the introduction, methods, and results sections are shortened, and the discussion is the longest. There are also only 20 references, which is an uncommonly short list for peer-reviewed articles. All right, let's look at funding, conflicts of interest, etc. Although, here's the thing. I don't know who would stand to profit from a study about eating after 5 p.m., but I guess you never know. Okay, we have funding from the National Institute on Aging, a grant from the Alfonso Martin Escudero Foundation, 2 Russ Berry Fellowships, and the publication was supported by the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences of the National Institutes of Health. That's all above board, I would say. The authors are all academic researchers. No competing interests were declared. Yeah, I'm not seeing any concerns here. Let's jump into the study itself. It looks like this study was designed to expand on previous studies that showed late eating was linked to poorer glucose metabolism in association with higher body mass index or BMI and increased body fat as a result of greater energy intake and highly processed food consumption. Keyword, linked. That's correlation, not causation. But here's where it gets interesting. This study wanted to test whether the association between eating late and glucose metabolism was independent of body weight, fat mass, daily energy intake, or diet composition. Why is that interesting? Basically, they are trying to pull out one specific association between 2 variables to verify that relationship is consistent and not necessarily affected by or linked to all the other variables. Okay, let me re-explain this for this study. Previous research showed that eating late was linked to poorer glucose metabolism. Glucose metabolism is the process by which your body breaks down glucose or sugar to generate energy. That previous research also showed higher BMI and increased body fat, but it was all because of eating more and eating bad foods. So the previous research says if you eat late, you're probably eating more and eating bad food, and that's why your metabolism, BMI, and body fat suffers. So our new study that we're looking at today is hoping to determine if there is a direct association between eating late and poor glucose metabolism, regardless of what you eat or how much you eat. This is cool because this is the type of study that gets you closer to causational but ultimately is still correlational. Participants, 26 of them. 26? Yeah. They're all from New York City, between 50 and 75 years old, overweight or obese, and either pre-diabetic or early onset type 2 diabetic. In the abstract, the authors give you the study ID number, which you can look up on clinicaltrials.gov and get even more detail than what's here in the article. All of these participants had to speak English too. They had to be breakfast eaters, they had to consistently get 6 hours of sleep, wake up between 5 and 11 a.m., and go to bed before 2 a.m. Participants were excluded if they had complicating diseases or disorders, smoked, used drugs, consumed excessive alcohol, and a few other things. So, again, we have a fairly small and really specific type of person participating in this study. If you're not between 50 and 75, overweight and pre-diabetic, this study might not apply to you. It's helpful for the study itself, though. This level of specificity in sampling helps weed out other complicating factors that can mess with the experiment. It's just something to keep in mind. Hopefully, the discussion calls for more research. Participants had to log their meals. They were classified as late eaters if more than 45% of their daily calories were consumed after 5 p.m., and early eaters if not. Basically, you're a late eater if almost half of what you eat is eaten after 5 p.m. Big dinner eaters. Already, this is telling me that if all of my meals are even, let's say 600 calories for breakfast, 600 for lunch, and 600 for dinner, I'm not a late eater according to the definition of this study. We are already moving past that, quote, don't eat anything after 5 p.m., like the scary news articles seem to say. It's don't eat half of your daily intake after 5 p.m. All right, results and discussion. After all the measuring and statistical tests, this study found that eating 45% or more of daily caloric intake after 5 p.m. resulted in lower glucose tolerance among older adults with prediabetes or early type 2 diabetes. The reason this is important is because if your body is not processing glucose and turning it into energy like it should, it increases the risk of full onset of type 2 diabetes. Now, the authors say there was no difference in total caloric intake or macronutrients composition between the two groups when you look at the whole day. By the way, macronutrients are fat, carbohydrates, and protein. However, they did observe that the late eaters consumed more fats and carbohydrates after 5 p.m. than early eaters. That lines up with the previous studies that showed late eaters ate more food and worse food after 5 p.m. All right, let's look at the limitations paragraph. This was all in New York City. Does it apply to other parts of the world? Maybe. Participants all had a prolonged eating window, meaning the period of the day in which they ate food was 14 hours or more. The authors say this could introduce bias, but given the prevalence of this eating pattern among the general population, it probably still works. Also, meal logging was all self-reported, but they estimate a 10% error rate. Here's the big one. Quote, the study's small sample size is a limitation, but for pilot studies such as this one, form or power calculation is not always possible, end quote. See? Small sample size. And this is a pilot study. Pilot studies are not conclusive. Okay, let's read on. Quote, however, caution is advised in generalizing findings as the cohort specifically targets individuals with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes and obesity. End quote. This right here is exactly why we go beyond the headlines. The news articles, the health blogs, whatever, are not going to give you that. They are eager to capture you with a headline and get their content and their advertisers in front of you. That's their purpose. That's the business. The challenge is that real research is almost never conclusive, and it almost never gives you causation. Here, we have a correlation in a small study among a very specific population. We need more research. We need more data. Here, the authors are calling for more research, replicating the study with more diverse populations and age groups to see if it is applicable beyond who they studied in this round. This means we are not yet ready to say for sure that all late eaters are doomed. So, for you 9 to 5ers, this is good news. There is hope for you yet. Are there takeaways for the layperson? Sure. I can tell you what I'm taking away. I'm going to continue trying to eat good foods, and I'm going to try not to eat huge dinners, but I'm also not going to panic when I decide to have a steak at 5:30 p.m. because I had a late call and I accidentally missed lunch. I'll probably be okay. I probably won't wake up with diabetes. Maybe. As always, I've put all the links in the episode notes for you to review. Take a look, let me know what you think. If I miss something, I'm always open to criticism. I mean, you're wrong, but I'll listen to you anyway. Just kidding. I've got a challenge for you. The next time you see a study on the news and you start to panic, send it over to me at contact@proveitpod.com. I'll take a look, we'll dive deep beyond the headline, and we'll get it on the next episode of Study Finds. For now, I'm going to keep working on some other research. I'm a little behind on getting things set up with other guests, but I promise it's coming. Oh, and hey, this will be the last episode before 2025. I want to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year. I want to take a serious moment to remind you to get some rest and to look out for your neighbors and loved ones this season. This is a joyous time, but it can also be a challenging time for many. If you or a loved one are struggling mentally or emotionally with life's many challenges, remember that you can reach out at any time to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. That's 988 from any phone in the United States. Please do take care of yourself and the people you know this holiday season, and know that help is only a call or text away. Until next time, I'm Dr. Matt Law. This has been another episode of Study Finds on the Prove It To Me podcast. Take care and stay safe, everyone. Prove It To Me is produced by me, Matt Law. Original music by Wes London. You can find this podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Like what you've heard so far? Please like, subscribe, and follow wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Got questions about what we talked about or research that you want to share? Send an email to contact@proveitpod.com. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and its guests and do not necessarily represent the official position, opinion, or strategies of their employers or companies. Examples of research and data analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based on very limited, often single use case, and sometimes dated information. Assumptions made within this discussion about research and data analyses are not necessarily representative of the position of the host, the guests, or their employers or companies. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast. The presentation of the content by the guests does not necessarily constitute an active endorsement of the content by the host.